You're now listening to the sound of sanity. This sound will continue for the duration of the program. Hello, welcome to Sound of Sanity. I am Nathan. I am your humble and obedient host. We've got Ben. He's the preacher he's a preacher who's a teacher of sanity. Right there. How's life, Ben?
It's good, Nathan.
That's
really good.
Good.
That's good.
Good. I know that's an advertisement. I know it's a reference to something. I cannot pull what it is. Chef Boyardee, perhaps?
I think you just got it. I think you nailed it.
There you go. The detritus of pop culture that lingers in my brain.
Yeah.
And the amount of scripture that doesn't. Very sad.
It's pretty sad.
If you want to talk about things that make me feel insane. But speaking of things that make me feel insane, well, I should say, hello, Jake. Hello.
Jake's kind of wispy today.
Yeah.
Kind of ghostly.
Yeah. In fact, he just, what's the opposite of, no, not the opposite of evaporate. He just evaporated.
Yeah.
The opposite of evaporate would be to evaporate, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Jake's not here, man. Jake is not here. Jake might not be here for another week or two. I'm sorry,
really?
Summer it is what it is. People go on vacation and stuff. Jake's camping right now.
Man.
Of all
Jake's
things.
favorite activity.
Jake's favorite activity. Yeah, if you want to feel like, what's the word? If our listeners are mad at Jake for not being here and they believe in karma, then they can understand that karmic retribution is being meted out to Jake right now in the form of camping.
I happen to like camping.
I've never really enjoyed camping, but I wouldn't, whereas you would. So
I guess so.
Doesn't make you a better person or a worse person. It just makes you a person who likes camping. A masochist, I think, is the word for that.
Right.
Someone who enjoys being stung by bugs and having
sweating,
throwing a log into the fire and having embers go onto your face and deform you.
Burn your beard up.
Burning your beard up.
Burn your beard into ash.
Burning your beard into ash. Well, Ben, what is making you feel insane today that we can have a conversation about?
Nathan, I think it's the total degradation of our culture.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that.
It's gross.
Yeah.
Oh, someone in our Discord, it was Jake, actually.
Yeah.
Jake posted an article from the New Yorker?
No, I think the New York Times.
Was it the New York Times? Yeah.
Yeah.
On cannibalism. Yep. New York Times. Here we go.
Yeah.
And it's, well, the Twitter link clickbait was like, the time for cannibalism is now. What does it say?
Cannibalism has a time and place.
There you go.
Some recent books, films, and shows suggest that the time is now. Can you stomach it?
Yeah.
You get it, Ben. Your stomach is what you use to eat things.
I get it.
Which is what cannibals do. They eat things.
That are people.
And then the article is, a taste for cannibalism? ? A spate of recent stomach-churning books, TV shows, and films suggest we've never looked so delicious to one another.
And then there's some really gross like Salvador Dali-esque illustrations of different body parts being on meal platters and like really gross, like sort of horror.
I was a little surprised by that.
Surrealist art.
Just as the header for the article.
Yeah. And there's a couple more in the body of the article. So if that sounds disgusting to you, you don't have to read the article. But
the article itself is kind of less interesting than its byline would suggest. I mean, it's really just a compilation of moments from recent TV shows that feature cannibalism. One of them is, I think, Yellow Jackets, which I know nothing about except for what I read in this article, which is that it's like a survival plane crash kind of a story where the people resort to cannibalism.
Something like that.
And maybe even the show pushes it a little further past survival cannibalism and into some kind of like they fall into pagan ritual or something like this.
Yeah.
And a number of other shows and things that deal with cannibalism.
Yeah. And I just, as I was reading over this, I was just thinking of like all these actors and these writers and these directors and these show creators creating the show like Yellow Jackets and other shows that are like, man, we're going to make our show about cannibalism and growth. But they're all these They were saying that they used venison in place of human flesh in Yellow Jacket season 1, I think. And then they were like, well, but we don't know what we'll do for the next season because some of the casts are vegans.
Right.
And I was just like, wait, what in the world?
These people can't even countenance the idea of eating animal meat.
Yeah, and they're the ones on the bleeding edge of every perversity.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, of course, I already knew that, but I don't know. It just struck me that here's these liberal, godless vegans who don't believe that God gave us the animals to eat, making a show about eating human flesh and pushing all of us to be as corrupt and perverse in our thinking as we can be. And all modern television shows are this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were just talking about a TV show. I don't suppose we have to say the name of it, but we both started watching it and we both got bogged down at various points where it's just like, this is really fun. It's well written. It's cute. It's clever, whatever. It's got a fun hook. And it wants to push the envelope in all these different ways that make it so that you just can't. You just really can't. I mean, it's a little different than old school. Perhaps the reason we got to new school is because we ever allowed ourselves to put up with old school. But old school was like, there's a nude scene. It's for the guys to ogle a woman's body. You can hit the fast forward button, and then like it's this dumb part of the thing, and it starts, it goes, it ends, it's done. It's like there's the bad part for daddy, or there's the whatever, but you get past it, and then I mean, I think probably a lot of us grew up with. Like Braveheart was a staple of so many homes when I was a kid. People just loved Braveheart because it's a story about heroism and all this stuff, but it's got a random nude scene, and so you just fast forward it or whatever. Some people would even like record over the VHS. But these kinds of shows, like you can't even if you want to make that sort of. It's
not even that. It's not even the fact it's not that they're all running around naked, but in some sense they might as well be because the show is about displaying the raw. All the possible perversities of the human soul.
And just having them baked into the plot in such a way that...
Baked into the plot, baked into the character, baked into the way the characters are visualized. Like, it's just like if you had to watch a gay pride parade. It's like they're going to put elements of that on the screen so that you can't just, record over the VHS. It's there.
Right.
It's just part of what's happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a cannibalism article. It's gross. And it is true, though, that... I mean... I don't know, Nathan. Do you think it's just liberals who are watching garbage like Yellow Jackets, like the extremely well-produced, I'm sure, well-directed, well-written, impeccably acted drama Yellow Jackets? Because I'm sure it's all those things. I'm sure it's like the top notch of the top notch. Because all of these modern perverse pieces of garbage, they're like the best writing, the best directing.
Yeah.
They're like the highest quality and the most evil.
Right. So sorry, what's the question?
Well, my question is it just liberals who are watching this?
No, it's me. I mean, I want to watch these things because I enjoy good storytelling. And so I'm always looking for something that doesn't cross the line. And probably I watch things that I shouldn't have. And I assume there's a lot of people out there that have, well, I know there's a lot of people that have less of a conscience about it than I do because I know a lot of my Christian friends watched Game of Thrones when it was a thing. And that show was on the cutting edge of perversity. So it feels a little quaint now. I mean, it was actually more just like have some more nude scenes, everybody. It was very rapey. And I mean, George R.R. Martin and the world that he created is gross.
It's really gross.
It is gross. So it is maybe still on the cutting edge. I don't know. We don't have to litigate Game of Thrones. But the point is, a lot of people watched it because, and I do have some sympathy for that because dragons, man, like warriors, battles, conniving royal stuff. It's all stuff that we like, fun stuff. I mean, I'm always hoping somebody will make a good show with all those elements, but you just can't. I mean, how much, there's this dumb Sunday school thing that I remember was popular when I was a kid, like an anecdote that got told, and maybe it's still told, but the daughter's like, Dad, I want to watch this thing, and it just has a little bit of whatever the bad thing is.
Yeah.
And the dad, he bakes a pie.
Yeah.
And he says, you want to eat this pie? And she says, yeah, it looks delicious. And he says, it is delicious, but I baked just 7% dog crap in there.
I hate this anecdote so much.
Me too. I hate it. And it is simplistic. And there are things that we should be able to engage with in a discerning way, it actually isn't right to just draw the line and say, I will never watch anything with X, Y, Z. I mean, there are X, Y's, and Z's that you can draw that line, but to simply say, no sin in my entertainment, that doesn't even make sense. Which we've talked about many times. We do a whole movie podcast. We do a whole book cast where we try to litigate all this stuff all the time. But I will say, as I get older and as I live longer in this world, and as this world seems to grow more depraved, I have a little bit more sympathy for a dumb, beat you over the head, black and white anecdote like that. Because I'm just like, guys, how much dog crap has to be baked into Game of Thrones to make you turn it off?
Right.
Like, I understand it's a delicious pastry. I understand dragons are cool and dragon ladies are cool and Westeros and the White Walkers, like, this is all pretty cool. But, you know, how much ultra violence do you need? How much sex do you need? How much? And I don't know, maybe some of those people had VidAngel or one of those services, which people that we love use those kinds of things. And I suppose it's not different in kind, perhaps, than what I just alluded to, having Braveheart and just fast forwarding. Or I had some James Bond movies on VHS as a kid, and my dad would make me just like record over, the VHS just turned to snow anytime there was a sex scene. I think we had that wonderful picture, Goldeneye.
Wow.
But anytime Xena Onatopp would show up, it would just turn into snow. But the thing about that is the same mind that crafted this story is the same mind that came up with Xena Onatopp. And don't you think that there's something baked into this whole thing that's a little bit more than just the explicit scenes? Have you really curbed every bad instinct in this thing if you just take those isolated scenes out? I don't know. Maybe that's a
well, I guess the question is, would you watch GoldenEye again in good conscience?
Yeah. That is a good question. This is not much of a temptation because that movie is a slog. But
yeah.
That particular one. I mean, where was I going? What were we talking about this? Oh yeah, you had just asked what do people give ourselves to? And it's just like, yeah, well, the one that I feel insane about. Maybe this episode has no larger point than us just honestly throwing up our hands and saying, ugh, I feel insane. I feel insane about this Lord of the Rings thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not going to have the kind of explicit content that a Game of Thrones will have. They know their audience. They know they got to keep it PG-13, Peter Jackson-esque. And they're playing in the Jackson world. They've got Howard Shore to do the music. Like, it's supposed to remind you of the Peter Jackson movies. I think it's explicitly set in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. And it probably has to, because they only have the rights to the appendix. That's all they've got. They don't have the Silmarillion. I don't even know if they have Lord of the Rings. I think they just have the appendix because Christopher Tolkien was that mad about the movies and tied everything up with that much of an iron thread before he died, which good for him.
Yeah, good for him.
But I watched the trailer for the Lord of the Rings. You know, they've been doing their last batch of cool looking trailers with all the footage and stuff. And I'm like, there's a lot of really cool stuff like this. There's big statues, and, like cities on the sea with the sun, and armies, and creepy, demonic, beautiful Sauron, effeminate Sauron, which I think would be a fun, seeing Sauron in his more early satanic form. It's just fun. There's a lot of stuff like that. But then you got the whole thing looks like it's built around like Galadriel, the warrior princess. And I'm just so tired of that stuff. Like, it's just, A, it's lame. B, it's not Tolkien, I don't think. I mean, people might point to Éowyn, but she was one small part of a larger story.
Yeah, she got to be part of, she was part of a couple of battles, I guess. Anyway, she had really one thing to do.
Right.
And then she went to become like a queen mother.
Right, yeah. And she was broken in such a way that made her want to do that, whereas her redemption, as it were, is through her heart being tamed by what's his face, the lordly dude of the whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's like her end journey is basically repenting of all that stuff. Now, Tolkien wasn't. He was weird. Like, his conceptions of women are weird, and you could build a pretty powerful Galadriel figure into your Second Age Lord of the Rings movie, but I don't think she'd just be a boring warrior woman with a sword.
Well, the original, I mean, the Galadriel of Lord of the Rings isn't.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. My mind just went to Great Britain has a history of some pretty powerful queens, like, I don't know, Elizabeth, maybe?
Right.
You think of Galadriel like that, you're like, oh yeah, Tolkien's a Brit. And that's how he's thinking of Galadriel.
And that's how he kind of thinks of, because the books, like you're really not spending any time with Arwen. That's an invention of the movies that they took a little chunk from the appendix again. Mm-hmm. But the books, the women figures are Goldberry, that wonderful character, and Galadriel and Éowyn. I mean, am I missing one? I'm sure there's
Rosie.
Yeah, Rosie. There's little side characters like Rosie and like the innkeeper's wife or whatever, but people like that. But basically, the women that we spend time with are these queenly, powerful kind of figures like Galadriel or like Goldberry, who's basically very similar. These kind of figures that we almost deify in a way, like these very powerful figures, actually, but they're women powerful. Like Tolkien has a different. Tolkien really likes powerful women, actually. Like I think it's a thing with him.
Yeah.
But his conception of what woman power looks like is much different than his conception of what man power.
Yeah, I mean,
looks like.
And you can see that it's the wonderful elf character Glorfindel who tames the river, or not tame, who untames the river, has it sweep over
the ring wraiths. Yeah,
the ring wraiths, not Arwen,
right,
in the books. And frankly, that scene is a lot more fun in the books.
yeah, it is good. Yeah, well, Peter Jackson is just so reductive. His whole writing of Arwen, and he was going to have her famously. You probably remember this because you would have been like in the Annette Cool world of all that. Like he was going to have Arwen at Helm's Deep fighting, and the fans,
remember that.
The fans revolted. Like all the Annette Cool newsies just said, "We don't want that. It's not from the book. It's corny. It's pandering.
Yep,
don't do it." And Peter Jackson was like, "Oh, okay. I'm sorry." Like they had shot. You can see footage. You can find footage online of like stupid Liv Tyler fighting at Helm's Deep, and they just cut it out.
Man.
And then by the time The Hobbit came around, they wanted to cram stupid Turiel, the elf.
The wasp.
Yeah, the wasp. Kate from Lost down our
throat. That lady is
yeah.
not any fun.
It's interesting because she's an ally, Ben. She's a conservative ally. She's
oh no,
she gets herself in trouble about masks and stuff.
Oh no,
she'll probably get canceled and have to go work for Daily Wire.
She and Gina Carano.
Can.
I don't even want to talk about it. It's just so gross.
Mm-hmm. But it's like, am I going to watch this Lord of the Ring thing? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's so hard. It's really nice to have something to relax and watch at the end of the day with my wife. It's hard to find things that we're both interested in, and so maybe Lord of the Rings will be something relatively painless that we just both feel like watching, just for the spectacle of it all. But it's like, man, there's not one male figure of identification in that trailer that looks like a awesome hero. Dude, I mean, there probably is like one guy with a sword or something that you can see from the trailer.
Yep.
But it's like the people that stick out in my mind just from the trailer is you've got Galadriel and she's some kind of princess with a sword, like just battle maiden, very generic. And then you've got Elrond and he's more of just stately, boring old Elrond, the young version. And then you've got various like women hobbit people that are like, we've got to go on an adventure. Hike up your skirts.
Yeah.
And then you've got some woman who's leading a Minas Tirith type city. And it's just like, can you at least throw in a little representation for me? Can I have a character? Like, can there be one male character who's a cool hero do I not get any? I mean, that seems a little selfish on your part. Woke makers of Lord of the Rings.
There was some elf dude, right? With a bow?
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, there you go. Done. Well, it's boring.
Yeah, it's so boring. It's so boring. Yep.
Well, that's about it. Everything is terrible.
Everything is terrible. Everything is terrible.
I don't know. There's good books to read.
Yeah.
That were written a while ago.
Yep. Yeah.
I guess there's the hope of writing news stories, but I don't know. Nathan, you want to start a film studio and make awesome manly action movies?
No.
No, me either.
I mean, I don't see
terrible.
people doing much in that realm. I mean, I was debating whether to bring this up or not. It's the obvious thing to talk about, I suppose, but I'm not excited about lore. I'm sorry if you're out there excited about lore. I thought that trailer that they did for David was so lame.
We didn't talk about that, did we?
I don't know if we talked about it, but if you don't know what lore is, it's like this Christian company that's trying to get off the ground that's going to do like movies and TV shows that are just as cool and well made as the big studio stuff, but for Christians. And so they did this David trailer, and it was a proof of concept. It was a fundraiser, basically. But not only did it look amateurish, I mean, I'm sorry, but it just looked like it was shot in somebody's backyard with some pretty generic special effects and a really bad fake decapitated head. But it also wanted to pander to the instincts of the Game of Thrones crown by having a bloody decapitated head. It's like, hey, look, Christians can make stuff that's dark and gritty and violent too. We can do it too. And Daily Wires, I sort of keep one eye on them all the time. They're doing these movies where they're like, hey, look, we can do stuff that's dark and gritty and mean-spirited too.
But it's more conservative.
Sort of. Even though all our heroes are women, again, for some reason. And I was just like, guys.
Well, we have nude scenes. They're conservative nude scenes.
Right, exactly. Conservative people are prettier in their nude scenes. I don't see a lot that's being done that I have much respect for. I mean, I know people like Wing Feather Saga. I haven't read that, but people like the Andrew Peterson stuff. I haven't really delved into that. I don't care to comment one way or another. Mm-hmm. But I think the only thing I would say is we can't be keying off of them. If you do want to be a creator, you can't just do the Christian version of the thing that the pagans are doing that you think is cool. You actually have to create something. You actually have to make something. And I suspect that won't happen until we've laid the groundwork of actual good churches, actual good community, I suspect what we have to do is build an actual Christian culture before that culture can produce art again. I think trying to produce art is maybe putting the cart before the horse. Now, we produce art here at Warhorn Media. We do. We like to do storytelling. I'm proud of the Ville and Chip and Lance and all that kind of stuff. And I want to keep doing it, and I want it to be good. And I hope it'll inspire people to do other things like that if they like it. So I'm not against it. So what's the difference between what we do and trying to think how to articulate this?
Oh, well, we would like to think we're not overstepping our bounds. We would like to think, in other words, we're producing things that are capable of being good stories on the scale they are.
Yeah, exactly. What we're not promising is it's a Hollywood production that's just as big as Hollywood production. We're going to take Hollywood down with this.
I mean, actually, well, that's actually not true. I think I felt uncomfortable because I think all that we're actually saying is you guys are making bad art. Mm-hmm. You're doing a bad job.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't bother. Just don't. If you don't have anything to say, don't. Just go evangelize some more.
Yeah.
That's actually what we really believe.
Yeah, I think that's true. And
if that sounds snobbish, okay, that's all right with me.
Yeah.
Because we could actually argue about it. And you don't have to like things that we do, like the Ville or Chip at Lance. You don't have to think that they're quality. But we would argue that they are quality, even though we've done some pretty imperfect episodes of both those shows and some things that were like, that one sucked.
That didn't really work. Yeah.
That didn't work. But I think they're pretty modest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I don't see. And that's what I mean about putting the cart before the hearse. I don't see a lot of humility. I see people saying, hey, without building any kind of foundation, without having any of the tools, without having even a Christian bedrock of understanding about what art is and how it works, we're just going to take on Hollywood. Like, we can just do it because we want to. It's like, no, you got to put in a lot of work. You got to figure out how to be a good storyteller as a Christian. And it's hard for us. I mean, we fail all the time, like you said. So you can't be cheap about it. And I think the next John Milton probably isn't happening until there's a foundation for the next John Milton, or for the next Bill Shakespeare, or whoever you want to say.
Sure.
Like if somebody out there is, and they just want to be, and they want to change the cult, like they want to say, actually, art is the thing that leads the cart. It's the horse. And they can pull it off, and they can change the culture through art. great.
Yeah.
More power to you.
Yep.
But I don't know that I've ever actually seen it happen. It would be a historical anomaly, I think, for a great artist to arise and change everything. I mean, art is good propaganda. It does change things, but it generally follows trends one way or another. It doesn't. It follows and then propagates trends and spreads them to the masses. But somebody has to build a foundation somewhere.
Yeah. Have we ever had a good Christian filmmaker?
Scott Derrickson, director of The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
And then Doctor Strange.
And Doctor Strange and the Black Phone, who was interviewed about 20 years ago around the time of Emily Rose by World Magazine as a Christian filmmaker.
No less.
These days, I don't know if he even calls himself a Christian.
Oh, in a recent interview I saw, he said, well, I'm a mystic first. He's not a real Christian. I mean, he doesn't even claim to be.
Well, maybe that's why we're complaining about this, because Christians are so quick to rush to embrace somebody, like anyone who says, I'm a Christian and I'm vaguely conservative and I want to do something and I have some resources and some imagination. We're quick to embrace that person because we're so desperate to feel like we have the cachet that comes with being able to create art in a decadent society where artists are our priests. It's like we want some of those priests to be on our side. And it's like, no, actually, we've got the priests. They're called pastors and they're not artists. Like we have, we don't need secular priests.
Yeah. I have to believe, though, I think there's some good Christian songwriters working, have been for a while. They tend to be lesser known. There's probably some good Christian poets. I'm kind of an ignoramus of what's happening in poetry for the past 20 years.
Yeah, me too.
I guess I wouldn't swear to that because I don't know. I don't know what there is. Are there good Christian painters? If they're painting Jesus, I don't care about their art.
Yeah, me too. I agree with that.
I don't know.
It's a complicated subject.
I mean, we rely really on the Catholics and Anglicans for our Christian art, like Tolkien and Lewis.
You know what? We'll come back next week with a more considered view of Christian art. How about that?
That sounds good.
All right.
Let's do it.
See you next week, folks. Until next time.
Stay sane.